Start off with a gift that somebody gave me. I went to Minus Space Gallery in Dumbo this summer. This was actually the 4th of July. And I saw the artwork of Robert Swain. And I'd seen his work before, and I had seen on the computer a show that he had in Santa Monica, which I fell in love with. And he had a catalog from the Santa Monica Museum that was there on display at Minus Space. And I wrote the Santa Monica Museum, and I asked, I teach color theory. I'm an abstract artist. Can you send me a catalog, or can I buy one? I'd really like it. And a few weeks later, I get a package in the mail from the artist himself. And it was filled with catalogs, not just this one, with about 5 other catalogs. And I just think that that's the generosity of artists. I just want to honor that. And this was from an essay that was in the catalog, entitled Color as Content in Painting. It says, color is a form of energy derived from the electromagnetic spectrum that stimulates our perceptual processes, as is instrumental in conveying emotions. The origin for such references are found in the way that energy, or wavelengths, form a particular color, generates feeling, a physiological change produced by the wavelength of a particular color or colors. There's more to that statement, which I can send you if you'd like. I was actually in a show with Robert Swain. This is a show called Banned in DC. And Mark Dagley, an artist who's actually, he's given a talk here before too, curated the show, and it's after a punk rock band called Bad Brains, the title. Robert Swain's like number 3, and I'm number 20 on that chart, and there's a lot of other really great artists in between us. And I felt very honored to be part of this. These are all artists that grew up in the Washington, D.C. area or around that area, and maybe left or maybe didn't leave. So that was something that was really cool. This was the painting called No. I named it after Dr. No from the Bad Brains. And I was kind of keeping in theme with like the Rasta colors on the sides. It's kind of like a goldish yellow around the sides, which you can't see. Maybe. And this is what Mark put in his essay. He says, Clement Greenberg, writing about Morris Louis and Kenneth Nolan, were both Washington Color School painters who, grew up, or they didn't grow up. Morris was a Baltimore resident, but, was in the Washington, D.C. area too, showing work. And Kenneth was a transplant because he was teaching there. He says that, and insofar as they accept the consequences of their isolation because they were not in New York, they made this choice to stay in this area. They make all the more moral of a decision. So I thought that was pretty powerful. And so I grew up, my mom is an artist, so we would go and, see what was going on in Washington, D.C. And I would see Morris Lewis's paintings, and they really meant a lot to me. This was actually shown in New York last year. I think it's called something like the Munchin Gallery on 45 East 78th Street. And I didn't see this show, but I've seen many in Washington, D.C. And this was just what I liked about this image versus the other one is you could kind of see the lightness that's happening on the top, like maybe where, the colors were originally before he put maybe a darker wash on top of. And this is one of my mom's paintings. And she made it in 2012. She works in Alexandria. I think Molly, where's Molly? Yes, Molly, yes. I'm going to call you out from that area too. She knows the Torpedo Factory and the Art League. So, my mom has her studio there, and she shares it with my sister, whose work is here.
What's your mom's name?
Marcia Staiger. And this is Whitney Steiger. So my sister's a metalsmith, and my mom is an abstract painter. She also teaches classes there. I liked Maria Hupfield, who's here in the room too. You did a video where you talked about you come from a family of makers, and I really like that. I'm like, it's an easy way to describe your family. It just was, what's your family like? Like, this is what we do, we talk about this kind of stuff. And this is this is my first painting that I made in New York City in 2001. It was 2 weeks before the World Trade Center came down. And this is of present day. This was my friend Kat Aranjad actually had this piece. I was working with fabric dye, and it does dye the wall. So she was actually giving it back to me. She was moving into a new place, but she had it for, such a long time. So you can kind of see the forms that I was working with, like fabric dye, lots of ink droppers. There was lots of metallic paint there. And this is another one that I made first year, MFA, Jerry Hayes' class. Lots of different mediums and shiny, shiny stuff happening that you can't really see because it's a glare. Studio wall. Just another example of that type of work. This was actually a piece of paper. This is a detail of a larger piece, but I thought this was more interesting than the entire piece itself. And I was working just like, sometimes building up little, like out of wood, and then I would lay, like kind of making a stretcher, and would lay plastic down and put the paper on and just kind of go to town and like really saturate the paper with different materials and see what happened when it dried. And this is the last one I'm going to show you from that time period. Unstretched. It was all dye with some acrylic paint, and it faded. Dye, if you don't set dye, it fades or it marks up the wall. That's what happens. And you can kind of see to the side this yellow painting, and you can kind of see these lines that are forming. This I'm just showing you is just a little example. I have hundreds of these types of works on little pieces of paper. These are things that I don't show. These are things that I think are just a process of me getting stuff out of my head or ideas out before I start to paint. This was a painting I called Technicolor. I made it in 2008, and it was shown at the AIR Gallery, but with an art collective that I was part of called TART. We rented this space out. It was in August, and Annalise Jensen organized the show. She wanted this piece in. I was very excited because by then 2 years had passed, and it's just in my studio. And so this is actually Medora Frey's work right next to it. I loved the pairing. Her piece is titled Little Quiver, next to mine. And this was actually something that I put together for Tart. It was my proudest kind of moment. I really loved doing different projects for them, and this was binders full of Tart. And so I got black binders very inexpensively, and we put artwork inside, and we would sell our work out of the binders. And this was all thanks to Mitt Romney. It made it even funnier. We wanted to buy like a cutout of him and make a little shelf and have the binder out, but it was too expensive. We didn't have, we could print this. This was like as far as we got with the money we had. And this is kind of some more of the lines and layering, like thinking about like a rich color in the back, you know, and these shiny kind of veil-like structures on top. And I'm showing you both of these together because then I was also making these very, very specific, very minimal in a way, line drawings. So, but I was looking at a lot of artwork in New York City, so I was looking at Polly Applebaum, She was showing at D'Amelio Terrace. I think it's just called D'Amelio now. And she was also making these kind of things. So she would work, with, this was crushed velvet and dye, and then she would, if you look at that, you can kind of see like one color and then the next color and then the patterning that's happening. But then you can see it here as well. It's just kind of like, enlarged and boxed up, And I think she also made the wallpaper or something in the background. This was a painting that I showed at the Wilmer Jennings Gallery through an art show called Vicariously Through You. And artists here in the room, Jason Luan and Maria Hupfield, were both in that show. It was a Emerenda project, and that's a Native American organization that was founded in the 70s by Diane Freyer and others. This was a piece that I put in the show. I was really struggling with this painting, and I had a friend ask me a question, and she said, "Why do you keep painting yourself out of your paintings? What would happen if you put yourself in your painting?" So this red triangle happened, and I felt like it was almost like a self-portrait, and I titled it Rebel Girl. If for those of you who might have listened to Bikini Kill in the 90s, now there's documentaries on Kathleen Hanna, I think called The Punk Singer. So this was the type of music I was listening to at that time, but something for me like really resonated, and that's how this piece came to be. It also kind of, when you look at it, it kind of makes me think of the world, something Earth-like is happening too, and there are these layers that are happening underneath of it. So I started making all these paintings with rules, where things had to touch different places. This was in a show that artist Susan Ross and we put together. And we put it in an office building because we weren't having many shows. So we got I was working as a receptionist, and a woman like hooked it up like in the office building. Like sometimes you never know where leads are gonna come. And it was called In Good Company was the name of the space, and we totally put this show up. This was the first painting that I made specifically with thinking about the hard edge line and tape. This is kind of jumping into like this series of triangles and kind of telling you how it formed. It was kind of formed in this very organic way. And this is kind of the process that I go through. Sometimes I make a lot of smaller pieces that then might inform a bigger piece, or maybe it becomes its own, or maybe I hide it, or sometimes I just throw them away. This was shown in the Painting Center. It was an invitational show, and it's titled Constructivist. It's about 12 inches by 12 inches. It's all acrylic paint. And this one, again, I was thinking about the rules. Everything had to touch a side. And what was the inside is very shiny. You can't really see it so well on this slide. Go back to Lee's. Okay, there we go, and here we are. This is Lee Trinseri. Around this time I went to her studio. I've been to her studio twice in my life. But this I saw at Minus Space Gallery when it was in Gowanus, like down the street from here. Now they're in Dumbo. But it really resonated. Sometimes you go to a person's studio and what they're doing resonates so strongly with you. And everything that they say, there's, importance on their words. And so I just had to honor her and put this up because it was really strong for me to see her work. And this was a work that I created, and it was in a show. I don't think it was, yes, it was in Vicariously Through You. And this, I was reading a book. It was called by John Sarno, and it was about healing your back pain. I have a lot of back pain, and this one actually, if you kind of look at the texture, you can kind of see it looks like, it's like kind of rigid, and then you see like some kind of weird texture happening. It doesn't look like brains, but I started to think about like I was making brains, and that, like the left and the right side of the brain. And I was reading this book, and it was basically like what John Sarno was saying, like if you don't accept the pain that you have, emotional pain I'm specifically talking about, and process that emotional pain, your body will give you a pain that actually, it's your body's way of telling you that something is wrong, and you have to pay attention and you have to slow down. So this was my starting to like really think about my body. Living here in New York, it's so easy not to. You're like running from place to place, or having to be, maybe not having a breakdown on the subway, like a mental breakdown or a crying breakdown, But now I'm pretty like good about just breaking down when I need to. So this one that doesn't want to show, it was doing that on my computer too. It's funny. It was a picture of, okay. It's Mercury retrograde. Yeah, I don't know how to fix it. It's just, this is like, it's this next, see, it's okay. It was a picture of Switzerland, and so it's also, you can kind of get subliminally see that like mountain. So, so I was in Switzerland, and I was seeing all these like gigantic mountains. It's like being picked up from Manhattan all the way there, and then you walk out and you're like, holy shit, where am I? It's just this beautiful place to be. And so, being like seeing that environment definitely was playing in with my work. And this was Nick Mango was is a photographer who was taking pictures of fruit. This was actually at a CSA. I got a grant with two other people, Susan Ross and Lori Hayes, to show our work at a CSA at the Lutheran Church of the Messiah in Greenpoint. And this artist took shots, and I actually sold this painting in the basement of that church. So thank you. All I'm saying is you never know, it's like you just never know. You have to be open. And I also, Griffin Thomas, who was the pastor of the church at the time, was amazing. And he would do awesome things like that. And so this is back at the Wilmer Jennings Gallery, Vicariously Through You. This is a shot of what that installation looked like. And there are, I do have books out there if you would like to take one. There's a few on hand. You can feel free to take one. This is at Janet Kernatowski Gallery, which recently closed. This was a solo show that I was in, and I had 7 paintings on display. It was a really great experience for me to show all this work together. And this is one of my friends who came to the show. I like to show this picture because she was like drop dead gorgeous in this red leather jacket, and it matched the painting, like these kind of like blips or moments where you're like, whoa, even down to like her shirt and fingernails. It was like really, really great. And before I got that solo show, my friend here, she connected me to a flower shop that sold artwork, and I had this, in the summer, I had this solo show, and I hadn't had one in New York. So then it's kind of like sometimes, people see you doing things and it just catches on. It's like, oh, even if it's at a flower shop, they're like, oh, she has enough work to do a solo show. So it just, worked in my favor. This was a painting that I created. I started to get more into energy healing work called Polarity Therapy. And this was, it really came from a place where I would have to ground myself before I worked on someone. It was, a white light triangle. Sometimes you hear about white light in meditations, and this was from that space. These are just some other paintings that were also in the Triangle Works show at Janet Kernatowski's gallery. Just kind of like thinking about energy and movement. This one too. This one was about, I was thinking specifically on how you can change your brain neural pathways, like from one thing to the other. You can, you can have healing from great trauma. I was going through some things that I had to work out, which were pretty intense. But through different, there was one technique, EMDR, which is a very gentle way of helping you, like PTSD or traumas. And I was really feeling the effects of like what that did. And it wasn't that one color's bad and the other's good. They're all good. It's just something shifts, something maybe small shifts, and then your whole organism shifts. And this was also included in that show. And there's Maria. And I've like lost track of my notes here, but I believe that I asked her if she would come and do a performance, and she said yes. I was so excited. It was like the messiness of the line, I believe was the title of the performance, if I have that right, which was amazing. And she had color streamers, and at the end of the performance, she had a bunch of holographic glitter in her hand and like blew it out of her hand, and it went all over the place. It was the most amazing thing. It got everywhere. It was so cool. And this was kind of the last painting of this kind of part one. I painted it, and I was really starting to think about the moon, and it's called Lunar. And you can kind of see like one time of day and the other time of day, or just a shift in like a change in something. And it's not round, I was working with triangles, but it just was kind of my thinking about that, like the point to really start to think about that. So this is like all Robert Rauschenberg. This was the studio that I was able to have while I was there. I shared it with one other person, Dawn Dideau. She's an artist from Louisiana. Those that you see back there kind of looks like spaceman suits. They're actually hazmat suits. She had the local fire department come, and she took photographs of them because in her thinking, she had lived through Hurricane Katrina, lost lots of things and people. And so she was thinking that, this would be like, in the future, the friendly person who would come and save you would be like dressed in a hazmat suit, because it might be something like really awful. And then I was making like, paintings of like the moon, but the interesting thing was at a certain point, like it starts to like cross, I made something a little more chaotic, which I'll show you, which really isn't that chaotic, but just the idea, how you start to kind of cross-pollinate when you're in a space like this. And that's what happens, If you turn left outside, you would see a pool and a hot tub. So it was a really beautiful, my first residency that I've ever been to. So it was a really great experience. This was Ann Brady, the director of the program. She put up this quote up, and I really do think that it's a smart thing to do, especially for artists. And I kind of held on to this and started to do more collaborative work with people when I got back, on purpose, like very specifically. And this is just a picture of Robert Rauschenberg, just to give thanks to him. And I'm not mad at artists who make a lot of money. I say if you make a lot of money, Damien Hirst or whoever, you give a building that you own back to artists, and you make it an artist residency, and you start a foundation and you give it back to other artists. What a really wonderful thing that he did for other people. That's his son Chris, and we did get to speak to Chris on the phone, and he was just in tears. We were telling him how thankful we were at the end. It was like the last day, and you're just so humble and such a nice person. So, not everybody that has money is a jerk, for sure. This was the first work that I did while I was there. I feel like the image like kind of flew over my head, and I grabbed it and then put it in a sketchbook. That's how things felt there, very fluid. It was like this leaf shape, or this half moon shape, kind of like falling into this other zigzag shape. It's titled Hidden. It's about 12 by 14 inches. It's kind of a smaller painting. Most of the work that I did was very small there. And this is Lapis Lazuli, half moon shape. And these stones are actually from Robert Rauschenberg. They just have cool stuff there that you can borrow. So I borrowed these 21 stones, and 21 is kind of like this number of, if you need to break a habit, or, it's kind of like this complete cycle. So I was putting that there, and I did get to take one of them home. I didn't steal it. They let me take it. I started to play around with stones and energy because I was interested in energy work. It's a Kuznite stone on top of this painting, and I showed that at Sideshow Gallery for one of their big shows that they have. And this is just, I'm just going to flip through this. This is just a bunch of work on paper that I made there. I was seeing lots of sunrises and sunsets, maybe the most I've ever seen in my life altogether. Just different, animals like snakes, all different kinds of things. This painting kind of showed me a lot, even though I'd never made another one that looked like this again. But it's called Making Purple, and it's 19 by 19 on panel. It's flash paint, except that you can't get flash paint to do that transparency. That's acrylic. Okay, I was just testing you guys. When it was shown to Rivington, it was a family style show. I don't know if anyone else has been in those shows with Julie Torres. She put that together. And this was called Tales. One of the artists, David Leggett, who was there, we were looking up the sky, we're like, oh, shooting stars, oh my God. And he was like, actually, those are pretty common. Those happen all the time. Like, what? And actually, once we were there, we started to see that they're not, not as, they actually happen all the time. So this was kind of like tracking that energy of these, like all these stars that I was seeing. And this, called Bulb. I was thinking of things growing, and, like the different processes, like being in nature, seeing how all those things take place. And this one I titled Esoteric Structure, and I just kind of was really feeling like I needed to make more of a mark, and it was like I had to wait to the right time. I wanted to make the mark, and I was kind of practicing on other paper, and then it just like, the red just like, just felt like the right thing to do. So kind of like timing and like feeling it in my body as the right thing. And this was the more chaotic one. I kind of got it from looking at my studio mate across, from me, all this like stuff melting into things, and it's a 22 by 30 paper, silk screen, edition of 7. They helped me burn the screens. I had like 12 screens ready to go. They had a gigantic silk screening room. It was awesome. That's all I can say. So this is the last kind of part. Annie Albert's quote, being creative is not so much the desire to do something as the listening to that which wants to be done, the dictation of the materials. So really thinking about like, what are the materials, what are, I was having this conversation with my body and what it wants to do. Well, what do these materials want to do? And this is a collaborative piece that I did with Maria Hupfield here. And 7 lines in all directions. And we made actually 2 of these. This one was shown in Canada. And that's a piece of blue plexiglass. So when you walked up to it, you could look down and you would see it go further into the ground. And we actually had it on display at the old gym, which is it was a dollar store in Brooklyn. And we would turn it so it was a glass window, so we had it leaning up against the glass window, so we would have the colors on the outside during the daytime, and it was winter, so at night then we would turn them facing in. So when people came in, they would see it on the inside. And we got somebody very upset. He told me we were cheating in art, so I didn't know that was possible. It was just funny that you can cheat. So this is a painting that I made when I came back. I titled it Mariposa. I was thinking of, you know, if you look at the top, you know, it's kind of goes, you know, out to in and out to in the other way, and just kind of using those structures, kind of butterfly-like, and expanding. All those reds are different reds. And here I was just playing around with like how much can I like mess around with the background and put stuff on top. Really is what I was thinking. You know, it's like how much can I put, you know, to make a painting work? How can I balance it? Yeah. And it was called Tropical. It's about 24 by 34 inches, all acrylic on canvas. This was a painting that I started and then I finished it when I got back. It's called Pink Strip. And I think this one is 24 by 48 inches. So these kind of chunky, colorful, you know, stripes are happening. And here again, that line, this was shown at Janet Kernatowski's 10th anniversary exhibition. It's called Digesting Red and Blue. I was thinking of the digestion process and how that relates to emotions and how you have to digest stuff. Sometimes that's hard. You know, and some of those little Sharpie parts, you know, they might be poking the softer part just enough. But that's what I was thinking about. And also, you know, layers. That's like a shiny circle back there, and then there's really matte painting that's happening, and then this transparency, kind of like the luxury of having all those together. And what do they do? So this is also thinking about the materials, about fluorescent paints and how transparent they are. And, you know, and again, like how much do I have to put on? This was shown at a different sideshow, one of the group shows, Sideshow Nation. So, you know, doing all that silk screening in Captiva made me want to come back and do printmaking again. So I signed up for a class at the Lower East Side Print Shop with Eric Hogan, an instructor who works here. You get some extra hours when you sign up for a class. It's actually cheaper than renting space for the month, and you are there for 6 weeks versus just the 4. So I would go in, you know, in the beginning of the day and just work all day until I had the class at night. And that's how I was able to, you know, utilize the print shop. And nobody was upset. I wasn't a mean person. I didn't talk too much. You know, I just kind of kept myself busy and working, so that nobody really minded, you know, me being there. I've done probably 50 collages similar to this with the cutout shape. So you know how you just use one thing into the next. So like I had all this paper cut out. That's shin clay. So it's glued onto the paper, and you print the print. It's all together at one time. If anyone's familiar with printmaking, I don't know, but you put glue on the back, and then you spray it so that it becomes sticky, and then you lay it very nicely on your inked plate, and then you run it through the press. And this is not printmaking. This is just collage. But some of those things, I was painting paper. You know, and just playing around with it. So this is from, this is number, I think 8, they've titled 8 because there are 8 circles there. And this was an art exhibit that was up at Wilmer Jennings Gallery, and it was part of Amarinda presented it. Stephen Hepworth was the curator, and Maria, who's also here, was in the show. And this, was me kind of like expanding that idea of what the circles could do and like playing around with them. That they could make lines even though there were no lines there. So I was interested, like you kind of start bouncing around, like you start to see a triangle, or maybe you see a square, or you know, that they're like radiating back and forth. And I had been doing a lot of meditating, and I started to kind of start to feel these things very strongly, starting to feel like my body maybe was a particle. And so that, but connected, you know, not just flying around nowhere. I am here. But, you know, where you can travel in your mind. So this is, I think, titled 9. Yes. And these were all about 60 inches by 60 inches stretched canvas, all acrylic. And I liked the way that the collages were looking. So I built up these circles with some golden modeling stuff, you know, and just tried to build it up because I wasn't able to figure out how to get what I really what I wanted. This got me happy, you know, it made me feel happy, but I was, you know, just trying to figure out how to do what I was imagining. And this one, titled 3, I was really looking online at the northern lights. I've never seen them, and how powerful they are. And the background color directly comes from me looking at that on the computer. And so I was just trying to figure out how to create that color, and the tails didn't really turn out so well. They kind of look like mushed up smoky lines or something, but they felt important too. And I was actually, the 3, I was actually having psychic dreams with 2 people, one person that I knew and one person that I did not know. So I was also thinking about you know, telepathy and how we share information and the energy coming from these northern lights, you know, and that I'm seeing it through a computer. But anyway, all that kind of information. And this is another painting, I think called Expansion 2. And these were, you know, I think they're about 30 by 24 on panel. And, you know, just kind of a mix of all those thoughts. This was a group of collages that I had up all together. And the black one to the left side, that's actually punched out. I took the whole punch and punched it all the way through. And some were just added on top of. And this is a detail, it's called Peach Digestion, of one of the collages that I made. And these were happening towards the end of preparing for that exhibition. I kind of took my palette and just smashed it all over the canvas, and it just freed it up spatially. And what started happening was things that were happening in the other bigger paintings, color-wise, things were kind of surfacing to the top and receding back. And I was playing around with texture at the bottom. So I included it in the show, where the curator, you know, allowed me to also show this, which I was happy to. And this was this past spring for a show called Paintings and Trees. It was shown at a People's Garden in Bushwick. Linnea Pascal, Ben LaRocco, and Ben Pritchard put the show together, and I think they had about 150 artists. They said they could have doubled it. At first they were worried, but then they said that the green just absorbed all the artwork, you know, and they really could have put more in it, you know, and everything felt like it had space, you know, nothing felt too crowded. So it was outside in the weather, you know, for a month, but I got it back and it was fine. I just let it dry out. It was fine. And I titled it, "What Do You See?" because I knew, and I put it really, wrote it really big on the back of that because I knew that people would see the back of the painting. And this is a collaborative work that I created with B. Woolert, who's here in the front row. Hi, B. You know, we have been working in a ceramic studio down the street. I first started working in the studio with homeschooled kids. I got to pay $20 and I would show up with them and use this, they would show me how to do things, and then it got to a place where I was able to ask B and we could just go at a different time, which was very nice. And we kind of take over the entire space when we're working, working on separate works, and then, you know, sometime this is one of the works that ended up working together. It is poured cement, it's, you know, ceramic, and I think 9 pieces of selenite, which is a stone. And we poured that in my backyard on a really hot day, that concrete. And this is my last slide. This is something new that I'm working on. You know, if you kind of, you can kind of see where things start to pick up from one person to another. This is actually paper glued onto a panel. It's painted panel and it's just glued right onto it. And it's about, I'm sorry, I like lost track of my notes, so I'm guesstimating here. It's like 45 by 35 is what the size is. So that's a little taste of what's happening now. This one is called White Paper Circles. So I hope I haven't kept you here too long. Yeah, I don't know if any, thank you everybody for coming. Yeah. This is all the ways you can reach out and connect with me. Feel free to reach out. There's, some free, I have some triangles catalogs. This is something I curated at Ventana 244. And Sarah senses vicariously through you. Feel free to take them. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has questions or how you feel. Yes, sure.
Your color choices seem so specific. Do you start with a very clear idea of what you're going to work with in a painting, or do they evolve like a little bit?
That's a great question. They kind of come in different ways. So sometimes I catch it like, it'll be like in my stomach and I'll feel like, oh, I need to work with like purple, like up here, like, oh, I need to do that. So I'll work with that, kind of like as a base, or I'll mix the color, and I think that's what I'm going to use for this painting, and then maybe it's better on this other painting. Or sometimes like looking at the Northern Lights pictures, I was like trying to capture something that I felt like was magical for me when I was looking at the pieces. How can I recreate that? So, kind of based on like feeling or nature, or maybe sometimes like the third way would be, I've never used navy blue as a color before. Why don't I try that and see what I can do with it? So to kind of try to always keep pushing something, to keep interested. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you start a painting and you're not really sure what it is until after a certain amount of time?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that Northern Lights painting, it was just the green. It was so beautiful, and I just had it on my wall maybe for like a month, and I did not do anything to it. I was just like basking in its glow, and everything that I put near it kind of, was just, I had to have that time. And then I got over myself and had to like work on it. There was deadlines. But yeah, I think it's important to have that time to be able to process what it is that you're looking at, and because it can feel really awful when you're not into it and you work on it and it looks awful, which happens too. Yeah. Cool. Hi.
It seems like you're really interested in expanding material-wise,
Yeah.
basically, with your collaborative works, but then also in working with paper. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your relationship to material and also moving, expanding from paint, or like how you feel about paint specifically.
Sure. I love paint. I think painting, like anything, it's a tool, right? I'm a color, like I think about color, I live in that world, and like the shapes that painting tools and tape can make, I'm there. But then, recently it just kind of like, by using those stones, it's like placing those stones like on the work, I was like, well, is that okay? Like, can I do that? Can I get away with it? It's kind of like, some people feel like, like trying to get away with something in fashion, like, can I wear that? Can I get away with it? Will it work for me? Because I think some things will work and some things might not, but to find like what feels right, what do I feel comfortable showing? And like having a sincere relationship, like to even that, just that white paper, I was like, oh, maybe I should paint these. And I'm like, I'll be here for 2 months painting white circles. And that's really kind of how I was feeling, and I felt like it needed to go faster. And I had a hole punch from a craft store. I also have fine tools that I've bought and spent lots of money on that cut circles. But it was kind of like this place where I was like, you know, I kind of need this to happen right now. And it wasn't in a place where I was trying to speed through something, but it was like this like acknowledgement, like this needs to happen right now. And everything felt right about it. And just like going into it that way. And that's, I feel like how I'm approaching materials. It's like when it's like visceral, like I embody it, it feels right, and then yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but okay, cool. Anybody else? Yes, hi.
Most of the body of your work has been really vibrant colors, particularly yet the last few things look like they're getting more muted and subdued. Do you think you're going to explore that as a coloristic direction?
Yeah, for sure. I think like that, and then like, I also have a piece that I have not shown here that's like all hot, it's all fluorescent colors. So I think like having like the balance of those things, you know, and being able to show like a variety, especially, you know, I think, I'm even thinking of Mark Dagley's show that you had at Minus Space Mark, where you had the like baby colors and like flaming red, almost devilish looking piece, you know, and I think there was one, the big gridded, right? You know, kind of like having this, you know, I really was inspired by that show that he put all these, like these different characters into the room almost, you know, and that's interesting. It makes it, you know, it kind of turns on different parts of your brain, and especially in an exhibit, it's like, because I can make, you know, 12 of these white paper circle ones, but I don't know if I show them all in one, maybe it would look good, but maybe if I have a, something else then counteracting it, maybe that's more interesting as a exhibition. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That's great. Any other questions?
Can you talk
Sure.
about the constraints? In some of the works, you sort of referenced a constraint that you put on it, a framing. One of the triangle pieces, all the sides had to touch.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about either the systems that you think about, or just the constraints that you're thinking about either now or?
Yeah, I think it's helpful. Like it's helpful, you know, to sometimes have a time or like, you know, you make some certain rules, you know, or even if it's like the colors that you love or you work with this where it's like, I'm going to play around with this amount of different things and see how many different things come up. It's kind of like being efficient in the studio, like thinking about your time, but also like leaving some open stuff or open space. Like when I'm teaching here, sometimes I tell my students, this might sound terrible, but I have like a few paintings that are like sacrificial paintings. And I have them all the time, and I do whatever I want to them whenever I want to. And that way, there's no, like, the exploration does not stop. I might be making these very rigid, like, white paper circle things happening, but at the same time, I'm also, like, have things going where, you know, I can also keep exploring what needs to happen, if that makes sense. Yeah, and those...
Same painting? Always on the same paintings that you have?
Yeah, so they're kind of set up, like if I know they're going in a terrible place, I keep them because sometimes that terrible place it becomes like a really cool place, you know, and I just like let them tell their story, you know, as it continues to either get worse or maybe better, if that's helpful, yeah, but just to not cut off, like, you know, you have rules, but then like sometimes you gotta have that outlet for them not to exist, if that makes sense.
Do you have rules all the time with
No.
your work? Just that period of time
Yeah, that time period. I think now it's just like, you know, you kind of fine tune what you're doing and you just kind of go for it. Yeah, if that makes sense. Yes,
How
Jason.
much waste do you produce in your research and development?
How much waste? Lots. I think that, you know, but I think that it's so necessary.
Lots.
Lots. Like, I've tried to be as efficient and green in my studio as I can possibly be. Like I recycle paints and stuff like this, but, you know, or I guess you're specifically talking about research.
Well, for
I
example, you
think-
talked about doing multiple works on paper.
Right.
That kind of disease. Do you ever
Right.
throw them out?
No, no.
Do
Unless,
you throw paintings out?
yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I'll just, we have like a sharing table, and so sometimes I'll just put them out there. I mean, that's probably terrible, but I have limited space in my studio. So, you know, it's like I can't keep it. I'm now looking into getting we have the money to now go get a storage facility, you know, like a 5x5 or whatever, just to put some things out of the studio into there. But yeah, it was, you know, it was just based on space. It was like, well, this is going nowhere, and I would just kind of toss it or give it to somebody. You know, if somebody really liked it, that was cool. You know, they could have it, or we trade, or you know, something like that. But yeah, sometimes, or I knew that if I put it out there, someone would take it and make something with it. And I had no problem doing that. A lot of the times that's what would happen. This one guy, he was a musician, and he moved into the studio, and he's like, look what I found. He had like these 3 canvases. I was like, I can't look at them anymore. And I put them out, and he was so excited. So I was like, cool, you know.
What is your process in making work that's designed to be just research and not necessarily artwork?
It's
or
just,
kept work?
it's like knowing when I'm working on like the paper pieces. Like sometimes there'll be like a consistent thread that's happening, and you're like, cool, like that kind of slightly works with that one. And then there will be like an oddball, right? You always get the oddball, and you're like, oh, where did you come from? The future or my ancient past? Like, where did you come from? And so kind of like putting that to the side to not destroy, you know, I don't make a quick choice and throw everything away. It's like it has to eat at me. It's like around, and it's taking up space, and it's eating at me, and it just feels so much better to get rid of it, you know. So, you know, just keeping those oddballs around, and I don't throw them out. I keep them as information, because sometimes I go back and I'll look through things, and you know, it's just telling of like, oh, you were jumping into the future here, or oh, you saw a show and that was there, and this kind of makes sense because of what you saw. So, you know, just kind of keeping track of what it is in that way. And the sketchbook too, I have a sketchbook that I work in. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions? I'd be so happy to answer.
Can you talk about your arts opportunities and the interviews also?
Thank you. Yes, this is on Facebook, Arts Opportunities, Jobs and Advice, and I think you know, it's a group of over 10,000 people on a Facebook group, and it's really just about you know, what it says right there. I started the group because I was part of TART, which is a art collective, and being in that collective, you know, within 24 hours, if not 2, if you had a question or anything, you know, you would get an answer from somebody. So when I left that group, I really missed it, and so I just started one on Facebook. And there's been really interesting discussions. Lots of you who are here participate in it, so I appreciate that. And you know, it's just to support the community of people that I know. I mean, because these are the like 3 things that we always need as artists. So money, you know, somewhere to show your work, and like, do you know a moving guy? Yeah, exactly, yeah. So we're hoping to like maybe do a webinar. Some people that are in the group are, you know, have worked as an art administration or something like that, who want to share what they know. So that's going to start happening at the end of the month through that group. And
You teach here?
yes, I do. I teach color theory, and I teach intro to printmaking, and also abstract painting. I teach those 3 things here. Yeah.
And you teach elsewhere?
I started doing this mandala workshop, but it's kind of like a meditative, and then it's like meditation, and then we make work. And I hope to, it was really nice, a student here opened up her space in the Flatiron called Journey, and it's a beautiful space. So it was nice that I got to use that space, and we'll do a few more things like that. And then I hope to kind of kind of intertwine, like do some classes with like more esoteric thinking, you know, sometime things from the Bauhaus, like people were doing these types of breathing exercises and things like that, and then have like maybe a class attached to that as well. So this is things that I've been working on and towards. Welcome. Yes. Hi, V.
I wanted just to say thank you for your openness and sort of vulnerability today, and it just talking about like the our communication telepathically. I'm just like, whoa! I just got guts around it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right. See, fascinating. Oh, cool.
I'm excited for what happens next.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad. Cool. Thank you.
I just have one more, because you started with a visualization. I just was wondering if you could talk about like that it's used in your practice, or if you use it in your practice.
Yeah, it's like a way to ground. Like sometimes I'm doing that on the subway, so it's not necessarily I do that right before I paint, but it's like just a tool. And I wanted to make that connection between shift of energy and looking at my work, because I think sometimes it just like clicks. It's like, oh, I get it. You know, I don't have to communicate verbally as much. It's really, I'm cheating again. No, I'm just kidding. So, you know, it's just like, I'm facilitating, thank you, much better word, you know, facilitating, you know, trying to use different ways to, you know, make things understood.
You do this in the subway?
Huh?
You do this in the subway?
I do,
With the
yeah.
sunglasses?
Yeah, yeah, most of the time, sunglasses.
Thanks, Melissa, for coming.
Thank you.